everybody, and welcome to a special edition of the Music Universe podcast. I'm Matt Bailey, along with Buddy Jan. Today, we take you to Nashville, Tennessee, to interview a true legend, one of the G-Men, Garth Brooks's session players, guitarist Chris Leuzinger, a member of the Musicians Hall of Fame.
Yeah, very exciting that you got to chat with him. I know he has, I would say, become a friend of ours, somebody we can finally label in the music industry of that stature, because you got to do this tour with him, and we've also hung out with him a couple of times while Garth was in Vegas, where he's also performing on stage with him during his Garth Brooks +1 residency at the Coliseum.
Yeah, he's a really sweet guy, and I think there's a lot of Garth fans out there that also feel like they can call him a friend, because he'll meet up with people after the show, or he'll come out a little bit before the show. He was doing this on the stadium tour too. A lot of the band members do that because he's, of course, playing with Garth, not just in the studio, but he's now part of the live band with Garth as well. So this was really special. We sat down for what was just supposed to be just a 5-minute kind of filler thing for our mini documentary, which if you're on themusicuniverse.com listening or watching this episode, you'll be able to see it. It's linked below. We'll also put the link in YouTube and probably put it up in one of these corners or at the end of the video. But after we finished filming, we sat down and we talked. It was just supposed to be a 5-7 minute chat, and then he was supposed to go. I think we talked. You did the editing on it. I think we ended up talking for close to 20 minutes. So I said, even if we use some in the documentary, let's make it an episode. And so this is our episode. The Musicians Hall of Fame tour came out yesterday. We gave that a day to live on its own. Now we wanted to put this out and kind of continue the conversation.
Yeah, and you're going to see some of that mixed in, some of that footage of the tour mixed in here to kind of help with the narrative and the storytelling. But it's a very, very cool conversation, and it's one of the most exciting projects we've gotten to do in our 10 years plus of being alive here at the Music Universe. So want to just, start by saying thank you to Chris. Thank you to the Musicians Hall of Fame for trusting us with that mini doc. And, it's just been a great, and Matt, of course, your interview was great, and the tour was great, and just a lot of great questions. And I think some that Garth fans are really anxious to hear of how some of that inner stuff works, because it's in there.
It's really cool. So without further ado, we'll let the man speak for himself. Now, this is not one of our normal interviews. You're not going to see Buddy and I smushing the guest in the middle. We did this on location, like I said, part of the documentary. So it's kind of just going to be a one-on-one situation with Chris. I'm off camera, but you hear my mic and you get to look at Chris and see some of the B-roll from that Musicians Hall of Fame documentary. Here it is. Here's our interview with Chris Leuzinger. Where are you from originally?
I was born in Columbus, Ohio, grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida. Yeah.
Very cool.
And moved here in 1972.
Very cool. Yeah, it's interesting. Some people from Florida have a southern accent, some don't.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I just sort of acquired mine somewhere along the way. I guess 50 years of living here.
Yeah.
It kind of rubbed off on me.
So Chris, when you got the call that you were going to be inducted as part of the G-Men, who called you and what went through your mind?
Well, Joe Chambers actually kind of tipped me off in advance and let us know that we were going to be going in and inducted. And I mean, just incredibly honored, to think that I'd be inducted into a place where so many of my heroes were already members and inducted into. It just kind of blew my mind.
Had you gotten involved with the museum before your induction?
Yes, I did. I've always been a big fan and supporter of this museum, and a really good friend with Joe and Linda Chambers. And just the fact that they came up with the idea to create a place, such a great place that would honor the supporting musicians and the backing musicians, that supported and played the music behind the artists. And I just wanted to do whatever I could to help that idea succeed, and was just helpful in any way I could be.
What does this place mean to you personally?
It's just, I mean, it's hard to explain in words. I mean, it's a beautiful place, and it started as an idea in Joe and Linda's mind. And you can look around. You just got to tour it and look through it. And like I mentioned, there's a lot of places that celebrate artists and stars and people like that. But for someone to want to celebrate the people behind the scenes, the people in the background, you know, it just seemed like a beautiful idea, and so wonderful that Joe and Linda were able to bring it into fruition.
We saw some of your guitars over at the G-Men exhibit. How do you keep track of what you've played on what instrument for all those years? Do you have a cataloging system? Is it a cartage situation? How do you know that? How do you remember for 30 years that that's the guitar that did the river?
Well, I just I don't have any kind of catalog system, or I don't write it down, but I just kind of remember, you know, which guitars, you know, I used on certain records. I don't remember on every record. And one thing I don't remember are pedals or amplifiers. I don't really, that's kind of hard for me to remember. But the guitars are just kind of special instruments. Each one is special to me. And I remember that I used that Jerry Jones on the river. I used my old 52 Les Paul on Friends in Low Places, and you know, different instruments. And sometimes I have specialty instruments that I wouldn't use every day, but I might have pulled it out for a special sound on a record. Like I have a rare Dan Electro guitarolin that I played on Small Town Saturday Night by Hal Ketchum, and on an Emmylou Harris record, and I just remember those specifically because I used that odd instrument on that record.
Talk a little bit about working with Alan Reynolds. You worked with him with Crystal, and of course Garth and the G-Men, and he's inducted here as the producer for the G-Men. What made him so special? What made, because I say made because he's retired, but what made him so special as a producer of country music?
Well, first of all, I do want to just say that Alan was incredibly an important mentor in my career. I mean, he really believed in me in the very beginning when I was very green, and I owe a big debt to Alan for 30 years of wonderful music, 30 years plus of wonderful music. And, you know, like I said, he believed in me and worked me into recording sessions, maybe even before I was qualified, but he saw something there. And Alan, he just, two things. As a producer, he was always known as a song guy. You know, he was always looking for the best songs for his artists. And, you know, he wouldn't fill an album full of, you know, have 2 or 3 good songs and then fill it full of fluff. You know, he was always looking for the 10 best songs he could possibly find. And I think that's evidence in many of the hits he had for all of his artists. And the other is that he was the kind of producer that was pretty hands-off, and his forte was hiring the musicians that he thought would best complement the music he was going to record, and then letting them do what they do. You know, you hire those musicians to come in. You're not only after their guitar licks, but their creativity, their arrangement ideas, you know, what different suggestions for arrangements and sounds and ideas. So Alan was always letting people express themselves, but he always had a plan where if things started going sideways, he could always go, well, hey guys, why don't we try this, you know, but it was always letting everybody express themselves first.
Talk about you. When did you first become enamored with the guitar?
Well, giving away my age a little bit, seeing Elvis on Ed Sullivan, and you know, Elvis wasn't at that time. I was focusing on Elvis, and really Scotty Moore was doing the playing in the background. But just seeing that, I thought that was really cool, and I wanted to get a guitar. Asked my dad for a guitar. He got me one, and little by little, it just kind of took over my life, and you know, ended up being all I ever wanted to do was play guitar.
Did you ever have any other job other than?
Oh yeah, there were many jobs. You know, there was many times early in my career when music wasn't paying the bills. So you know, I laid sod. I worked at a phone company in New York. I you know, delivered photographs for people. I worked at a car wash. I bussed tables. I did whatever would pay the bills when the music didn't.
So then what was the breakthrough for you to make it full time?
Well, the very first breakthrough big breakthrough that I had was when we moved to Nashville. I moved here in 1972 to play in a band with some buddies of mine. We were just playing little clubs. There was a publisher named Juan Contreras that took a liking to our band. He started introducing us to people, and one of the main persons he introduced us to was Norbert Putnam, who owned Quadraphonic Studios. And at that time, Dobie Gray and Mentor Williams, his producer, had just finished recording the Drift Away record in 1973, 74 at Quad. They needed a band to go on the road to support Dobie. So because Juan had introduced us to Norbert, we were hanging out at Quad, they decided to hire our band. That was my first big road gig. We were backing up Dobie playing Drift Away, and that was my first big touring gig.
When somebody calls you as a musician, as a guitarist, as an iconic session musician, if I may say, when they want Chris Leuzinger and they want the Chris Leuzinger sound, what are they looking for when they call you? How would you define your? I guess I'm asking you, how would you define your sound?
Oh gosh, that's a tough question. I really don't know. I mean, you know, to be honest, I've never been considered myself, like I grew up playing R&B and more rock and Latin and things, so I've never considered myself a true country guitar player like Brent Mason or Jerry Kennedy or people like that, you know. But I guess they're just looking for a certain style, maybe that they've heard on a Garth record or a Hal Ketchum record or Kathy Mattea record. And, you know, they wouldn't normally call me to do fast telly picking like Brent Mason. If they wanted that kind of playing, they know to call Brent for that, you know. But I guess a more subdued, just different kind of sound or whatever sound they're looking for.
One of the things Garth likes to talk about when he introduces you and introduces the band is the difference between a studio musician and a live musician. And I'm wondering, what is the difference for you personally between playing in a studio? I mean, obviously there's the environmental factors, but I mean, for you and the experience and the way you experience it and the way you play, what is the difference between being in studio versus being live?
Well, in the studio, it's just, you know, you're playing into these days, you used to play into a tape machine, now you're playing into a computer basically, and you know, there's no audience reaction there, and it's all about just creating music in the moment. And you know, one thing I say, you're creating it, as whereas when you're performing a lot of the stuff live, you're sort of recreating it, you know, in a live situation. But in the studio, you're coming up with the ideas that will formulate the songs and formulate the records. And there's a lot more precision involved, you know, as far as playing in tune, playing in time, really listening to the other players and making, you know, fitting your part in with the other players. And live, it's just more about creating more excitement, performing those songs that were created in the studio live in front of people. And you know, it's like always in Garth's band, you know, they would take what we did in the studio and turn up the notch about 10 degrees for Garth live, you know, from the records.
He said something really interesting. He said he realized the music made the jump, especially double live, because when he would say Louisiana in Call Baton Rouge, the crowd went up and shouted it with him.
Yeah.
Versus Louisiana.
Right.
In the song. Are you noticing that with the crowd, like that they're in tune with you, in tune with the music, and vibing with what you guys are doing as the players?
Yes, and I think it's kind of true in Garth's music. Really, I mean, every show I've done with him, the whole audience is standing up and singing along with every song. In Vegas, there's some people sitting in the tall balconies, but on the floor, and all the stadium shows I did with him, people stood and sang along with every single song. So yeah, there's definitely a vibration there, and that's the thing about seeing Garth live that's different, I think, than some other entertainers. You're not going to sit there, you're not going to attending the concert to sit there and watch somebody play. You're part of the show. The audience is just as big a part of the show as Garth or the band.
It's funny. He goes, please have a seat.
Yeah, yeah.
And
Yeah.
the reason I laugh at that is I saw Celine there, and I was in the upper balcony. That room is so intimate, but it's so big at the same time. Was in the upper balcony for Celine. She does her first 2 songs, everybody's on their feet, and she goes, "You paid a lot of money for those chairs. Sit down."
Oh, that's great. That's great. That's great.
One of my favorite licks of yours, I think it's yours, is the That Summer Bridge.
Yeah, yeah.
That's yours, right?
Yes, uh-huh.
So, but you don't play it live.
No, no. When I signed on for the gig with I say when Garth, and let me rephrase that, when Garth invited me to come on the road with them, Gordon Kennedy, who's a fabulous guitar player and a great friend, he was already playing in the band. And at that time, he was playing all the solos. And Garth asked me to come out and join them. So Gordon and I just decided to split the solos between us. And he plays the solos on that and Shameless. And that's fine with me. And I get my share of the solos on other solos.
I love it. No, I'm just such a music nerd. I want to hear Chris Leuzinger play it's like...
Yeah. Well,
it's like every time, because Buddy's a drummer, you met Buddy out in Vegas. Every time we're there, we're at a show, he will be staring at Milton.
Right.
The man wants to meet Milton so bad. It's wonderful. So
well, it's kind of the same thing with Milton and Mike Palmer. Mike's done that gig since the very beginning of Garth's career.
Yeah.
And so, he and Milton just trade off songs and it all works out.
It's fun to watch them because they'll hop between the percussion setup and the double drums.
Yeah.
It's really cool.
Yeah, I think they're having a great time. And Gordon and I are just having the time of our lives.
Right.
I love playing with him.
Yeah. Whether it's Crystal or Garth or any of the other innumerable people you've played with, even Riders in the Sky, which honestly I didn't know they used session musicians because their sound is so tight as a group. I didn't know they used session players.
Well, they don't normally, but this one children's album they made, they wanted some electric guitar on it.
Oh, cool.
So they hired me to play the electric guitar on it.
Do you have a favorite lick, solo, intro, outro that you have designed in the studio?
Well, yeah, I mean, there's the ones I can think of, I'm particularly, I like Ain't Going Down Till the Sun Comes Up. But of course, when I say I designed it, it's really a bunch of Chuck Berry licks. Because, that's just what the song called for at the time. I played them. The solo in Shameless, that's one that I think, we took a lot of time with that, getting it just right. And it may be one of the first country solos that had a whammy bar dive on the end of it, with a whammy bar. But
well, that makes you feel the grief. That makes you feel the longing.
Well,
just,
you know what? I
right
never
there.
thought of it that way. That's awesome. That's awesome. I never looked at it that way, but
yeah. When you spend hours and hours a day just thinking about music, you start to realize what the imagery is that's trying to be created. And like he talks about that summer being wheat fields and that chord being a thunder instead of an open road. And my favorite song that you do in the residency, because we did cover the residency, it's a cover, it's Turn the Page.
Oh, yeah.
You guys look like you have so much fun as that builds and builds and builds.
Yeah, I love playing that song, and that's the first time we'd ever done it with him was out there, and it's a great addition.
Last thing I want to ask you is, you've done so much, and you're in this Hall of Fame as a member, and you're in as a bandmate, a team member. What did it mean to you to be inducted, not just inducted, but inducted as part of a group with some of the most legendary songs in country music?
I'm sorry, with what?
What did it mean to you to be inducted as part of the G-Men, as part of that unit?
Well, it meant a lot because, we've been a band working with Garth for over almost 35 years now. And it's really become more of a family. It's not just a bunch of guys playing music together, but we all love each other. We all know our kids, we all know our wives, it's including Garth, and Alan Reynolds was inducted too, and Mark Miller was inducted at the same time, the engineer that recorded all the records. And, And I'm not saying this in a bragging way, but it is quite a legacy of music that we've all made together. And it's hard to describe the connection you get recording music together. It's just a kind of a connection that, and especially with the same guys for 30 years. And so it's very, very special to me.
That's awesome. So this is one of those inside baseball questions I have for you. Not sure if he'll put it in or not, but speaking of fade outs, the dance, very famously, there's a coda live, there's a coda that gets played till he's off.
Right.
I assume that's a loop, and somehow you get cued that it's time to bump, bump, ba-dum. How do you play the end live and stay together like that?
Well,
that's always
it is planned out.
Yeah.
It is like on the stadium show, the stage was much bigger.
Yeah.
So we played it longer. And if you want to know the specifics, Dave he does the re-intro, plays it twice. Then Gordon plays 2 solos, Steve McClure plays 2 solos, I play 2 solos, and we're done.
Wow.
Then we hit that lick. When we got to Vegas, the stage is not so big, so we cut it. Dave has 2, Gordon has 1 solo, Steve has 1 solo, I have 1 solo, and then we're done. Yeah, so it's not really a cue. Oh, I'm sorry, after my solo, Dave has 1 final piano.
See, I didn't know if it was a loop, and then when he left, maybe Dave cued you with a different chord progression.
No.
To come into the bump, bump, that lick.
Yeah, no, it's planned out
Very
every time, part of the arrangement.
Very cool. Didn't know that. Chris Leuzinger, you have spent an hour and a half in this beautiful room with us. Thank you so much.
Well, thank you. And whether you use this or not, I would be negligent if I just didn't say a couple things. First of all, I recognize all this is a blessing from above. I have no doubt where this comes from, and I'm very grateful for it. I'm very grateful to Garth for being the most loyal artist ever and keeping us all together for this many years, and for inviting me to go on the road with him. Very grateful to Alan Reynolds for his mentorship, and Juan Contreras for getting us started. Just wanted to add that.
I love it. This is beautiful. This was fun. This was a really fun
thank you.
morning.
Thank you so much for asking me to do it. I'm very
thank
grateful.
you for saying yes. Thank you for preparing notes. And oh my God, I couldn't believe it.
I told my daughter last night I'm doing my homework.
Well, I knew you would want to do it because, like you said, we're friends on Facebook, and you're posting all the time about this place. It's important that it grows. It's important that people keep supporting it. You come to Nashville, I'll say this on camera too, but you come to Nashville, you want to really delve into how the music was made, come here.
Yeah. Well, I absolutely love this place.
Yeah.
I love it.
I fell in love with it
everything
too
it
today.
stands for, yeah. And, I do want to say we were all incredibly saddened by Joe's passing last year. And
Let's do that. Let's do that as last thing. Talk about Joe as the founder. What you told me when we met in Vegas, without, of course, the eminent domain and all that, but what you told me about Joe founding it and how you kind of got involved because of that, if you wouldn't mind.
well, it's just, Joe and Linda both took this as just a dream and an idea of, celebrating the background musicians, the touring musicians, the session musicians that play the music behind the artists. And, for somebody, first of all, to think of doing that and then turning it into a reality like this is just amazing. And won't go into detail, but there was a lot of dedication and perseverance and a lot of roadblocks along the way that they had to overcome to turn this into what it is today. And it's wonderful that Joe's legacy can continue here, and that people can come and enjoy this. And that he will live on through this museum. It's wonderful that it's continuing under the direction of Linda Chambers, and we're just grateful. We're great. Well, all the musicians love this place. We're very grateful for it, and grateful to Joe and Linda for creating it.
It's beautiful. Chris, thank you very much.
That was actually recorded over CMA Fest in 2023. Chris was very cool enough to meet with Matt ahead of some local in-town stuff he had to do, and dedicated a good couple of hours with him to do the interview and give the tour. And please, please, please be sure to check out our mini doc of the tour, really, that Chris gives Matt and you guys. And if you're ever in Nashville, you have to go check out that place. I've been to the original location. I've not had the opportunity to visit the new one, so we're going to have to do that sometime.
Yeah, Municipal Auditorium. It's fantastic. It's a really cool location. It's a very big museum. There's even a section, Mike Kerb's section, with all the memorabilia that he's collected, including some props and set pieces from the TV show Nashville. There's a Jimi Hendrix section that we didn't go in with, Chris. There's a Grammy Museum section that couldn't be a part of our tour because the Grammys own that.
Right.
So it was really cool. And thank you to Chris again. He did a lot of work to prepare for it. You see him walking around. He has a piece of paper. He took all kinds of notes, and he was excited to do this, and we were excited to have him. So thank you again, Chris. Thank you again to Peter, who helped out with our camera footage. And again, check it out. This is like in the top 5 of projects that I've done that I'm most proud of. And Buddy, great job with the editing. Really, it was a lot of work on your part, but it got really, really good. So thank you again to everybody. I know we've been saying thank you since we came back from the interview here, but I really appreciate all the effort that everybody put into this to make this as good as it's gotten. And so go ahead and check that out. Linked below. And then we're also going to link this episode to the actual documentary, so the people who watch the documentary, if they want more from Chris, can check out this interview. So for the Music Universe podcast, I'm Matt.
And Buddy, thanks for listening and watching. And as always, check us out at themusicuniverse.com. Follow us at socials at themusicuni, and tmupod.com is where you can subscribe. Take care.